Dear friends, the story of Joseph in the book of Genesis is one of the most powerful examples in the Bible of an individual trusting God's plan even though he's experiencing extreme difficulty and hardship. Joseph's life, which was initially marked by betrayal and suffering, ended with God blessing him abundantly, and it continues to offer practical lessons for Christians today. Joseph's troubles began when he was betrayed by his brothers because they were deeply jealous of him. And they were jealous because he was the favorite son of their father. As a result of this jealousy and bitterness that they had towards Joseph, the brothers sold him to slavery to the Egyptians. Joseph really suffered as a slave in Egypt. He had to learn how to cope as a slave in a foreign land, and you can imagine how difficult that was. Despite suffering for so many years in Egypt, Joseph never abandoned his faith in God. His story is a reminder to believers that trusting God does not mean that you avoid hardship. Rather, it means remaining faithful to God through whatever difficulties that you may be experiencing. You still remain faithful to God. After a series of events, after a series of events which Joseph was given an opportunity to interpret the Pharaoh's dreams, Joseph rose to power in Egypt. Now, what can Christians today learn from the story of Joseph? When Joseph resisted the advances of Potiphar's wife, he displayed personal integrity, which we should have as believers. We should have integrity and deep trust in God's plan for us. Joseph's behavior is exemplary in that it shows Christians today how they can live with integrity and faithfulness to God, even while they are in secular workplaces or in secular cultures. They still maintain their integrity and faithfulness to God. God can and still works in the lives of his followers to accomplish his purposes. Therefore, we should not allow workplace pressures to compromise our integrity. Instead, we should stand firm in our faith and conduct ourselves in a Christ like manner. Secondly, we should trust God's plan even when life does not make sense to us. Joseph's suffering had a purpose, even though he could not see it during the initial stages. Proverbs chapter 3, verses 5 to 6 says, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all ways submit to him, and he will make your paths straight." Now, the third lesson we can learn from the story of Joseph is that you should remain faithful to God even when you are in the season where you are being hidden. God was shaping Joseph while he was a slave and also while he was in prison. He was shaping him for his future role as a leader in Egypt. Then later on, God promoted Joseph to a position of power in Egypt. The fourth thing we can learn is choose forgiveness over bitterness. Forgive those who have mistreated and oppressed you, just as Joseph forgave his brothers who betrayed him. And then the fifth thing we can learn is believe that God is working behind the scenes. Romans 8:28 says, "And we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him." In summary, we learn that Joseph did not just endure hardship, but even while he was enduring hardship, he trusted God with his entire life story. Because of that, his faithfulness impacted generations and fulfilled God's promises. God used Joseph to fulfill the promise he made to Abraham, which promise was that he would be a father of many nations. So he was able to fulfill this promise through Joseph. During the time when there was famine, Joseph invited his brothers to all come and live in Egypt, where he took care of them because now he was in a position of power. He was able to take care of them, and as a result, they lived in Egypt for so many years and they multiplied and gave birth to so many children. So, in this way, God used Joseph to fulfill the promise that he had made to Abraham that he would become a father of many nations. Because, as you know, Joseph was an ancestor of Jacob, and Joseph was descended from Jacob, and Jacob was descended from Abraham. So, today's take home is that as believers we can apply Joseph's experience in our lives today. We can trust the author of our story even when we don't understand the plot.